Hello, and welcome to another episode of Page Burners. We are working our way through the Malazan books by authors Steven Erikson and Ian Esselmont. We are currently working our way through Deadhouse Gates, which is the second book of the Malazan Book of the Fallen by Steven Erikson. We're reading them in publication order, so it'll be a while before we meet a book by Ian Esselmont. But I have to say this every episode. With me, I will introduce myself before Carl yells at me. I am Varsha. I run the YouTube channel Reading by the Rainy Mountain, and I'm on some podcasts that you can find on the pagechewing forum, Speculative Speculations in particular, and I appear on other people's podcasts as well. What else? Yes, these discussions, we have a lot of threads for them on the forum. If you'd like to chat with us about these books, please consider checking out the Patreon forum. And yeah, that's about it. Steve, could you start us off or continue the introductions? And the other thing we do is also we talk about what we are most excited to discuss, which for me, sorry, Steve, just is what I would like to talk about the scale of the sandstorm or the whirlwind that is has now appeared in Raraku, and I guess follow-up question whether what Shaik did at the end of the previous section actually succeeded, because the whirlwind appeared in the form of a sandstorm, sort of. But Steve, over to you.
Yeah, I'm Steve from pagechewing and from Steve Talks Books, and I am most excited to discuss how the innocent are the ones who really suffer in war. I think this is something that was there's some pretty rough passages in this section. I think we were talking a minute ago about how bleak and how dark some of these sections are. It's very Baker-esque. In some ways, even more disturbing because the tone is much different. So in Baker's worlds, you kind of expect it. But in Deadhouse Gates, it kind of sneaks up on you, and you can have some dry humor and some kind of calm, and then it's like people are being choked to death by their intestines. So it's pretty wild. But I'll pass it over to Carl. And Carl, you have to plug your book because we will all yell at you if you don't. So don't forget to do that.
I'm Carl. I write words, some of which you can find on the internet under the title Truth of Crowns. It is a epic fantasy tragedy. It's actually edited. I mean, it's fun now that we're talking about Malazan. Edited by, the developmental editor was one of the early readers and a professional editor for the Malazan books. I don't know if he does both Erikson and Esselmont's, but definitely works with Erikson. That's AP Canavan. Great dude, great editor. Was a huge help working on my book. Anyway, Steve stole what I was most excited to talk about, which is just how heavy everything is. So I guess I'll differentiate it slightly by talking about the horror elements of this book, of which I think there are many. It really stands out to me, and again reminds me of coming off of the Second Apocalypse and R. Scott Baker's work, which to me feels almost as much a horror story as it is a fantasy. And in these chapters in particular, there's a lot of horror. Dan.
Yeah, I guess I'm Dan. I'm a reader of words. And I guess I haven't yet read Carl's words, but maybe at some point I'll read your words.
Not all the words then, just some words.
Well, I don't think have I read any of your words? I guess your messages on the forum. I've read those.
Acceptable.
Yes, those are epics by themselves.
Yeah. I guess I've listened to his words. I've yet to eat, smell, or touch them, but maybe at some point.
What do you do with your books?
Yeah, I'm getting a little concerned now. I'm a little uncomfortable. I may peace out here and leave you to endure, Dan.
That's a reason why I don't have any books in my house. I'm not allowed within 100 meters of a book. Court order, but yeah. But I am interested in talking about something we were touching many other times, but like how the gods are perceived in these books, especially like the last part with Fener coming to the world and like the way they talk about him. I don't know. It's interesting and different than you would expect, I guess.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, Shannon.
And I'm Shannon, and I am most interested to talk about pretty the same thing about Fenner coming into their world and well we could talk that out because I'm still very confused about what all really happened there and like where's Hiboric's hands.
I guess is it pronounced? Where's the accent on it? Is it Fener? Fener? What is it? I don't know.
Yeah.
Fenier?
You can't do this to us, Varsha.
Yeah. I only pronounce it like with an Italian accent. Fener. Fener. Because there was a town next to where I lived which was called Fener.
Mm.
That does
So.
actually kind of feel appropriate, like Fener, I'm not gonna lie, but I've always said Fener.
Yeah, it's probably right.
Sounds like an insult almost, like finette, like, you know.
Yeah, it's very in my area where I grew up, there was a lot of places that have that kind of word that ends with R or with an accent at the end. So it's kind of like, I don't know, in my mind, that's how it sounds. But probably right, the other one.
And without spoiling anything, since Steve brought up Baker, does anyone else get reminded of a Ejokri when Fenner was described? I don't know if I don't think they are related at all, but yeah.
I can't say that I get why it would.
Yeah.
Why would you think of a Ejokri?
I don't know. They both have the same face in my head. I clearly don't pay attention to descriptions. There's a random image in my head and I fit them.
But Fener is like the god of war, isn't it? Sort of. It's like fighting, not like trickster and.
Yeah, no, not about their aspect or what they do. It's more just how they look, I think.
I do associate both of them with like burnt orange, red sort of colors in my head. So
really?
Yeah.
I think of Fener as like green, I imagine.
Me too. I was about to say, is it because of the projection
is he described
from
as green?
Heberic? Yeah.
You're gonna blow my mind if he's a green boar. Is he a green boar?
That's how I imagine it.
I don't think he's actually green, but I got the sense that the projection, like we don't actually see Fenner, right? We got to see some weird 3D cutout thing of him, and that, for some reason, I thought was green. Either because it felt like it was made of light and it must be reflecting the green off of that jade hand.
Maybe, yeah.
I don't know if that's explicitly described, but if both of us thought it, maybe it is.
Okay, so we're clearly starting with Fenner, so I'm gonna
let's just get into it.
Which I am with Shannon that I am confused about what's going on here, even after now. This is my third time reading this scene, and I can't say I understand exactly what's going on. That's kind of okay, because I'm cool with the magic being ineffable, but it is hard. I mean, even like geographically, I struggle understanding, like, is the boar rising up into the sky or falling down? And does the tattoo, when it grows and becomes this projection, become like an image of the god itself, or just like this like silhouette? Not a silhouette, I guess it's deeper than that, but like just like a shape of a boar. Some of that is unclear to me. That said, it's an epic scene. I very much enjoy it and always feel very shaken reading it. And I do think, I guess my last thought before I hand it off to someone else is that I have to imagine the jade statue is kind of what caused it, right? Because that's what started Hiboric's fever in the first place. Like the closest I can get to kind of following the mechanics of whatever's happening there is Haboric touches some sort of magic jade statue that makes him deeply sick, and wars with like the god he is connected to. And that is why he's so feverish. It's like if you think about it, fevers are like your body trying to fight an infection, right? And so I similarly read it as like his body was fighting itself, like the spiritual battle fighting, was being manifested physically in his sickness. And it then is released when they do the little salute spell prayer thing that Bowden like kind of forces him to do, and basically separates him, cuts him off from the god by bringing the god down to the mortal realm. But beyond that, I don't really understand how any of that works. And obviously, at this point in the story, the Jade Giants are completely mysterious.
So here's a vague sort of theory. So we know that Heberic's hand was chopped off because it was the second half of the symbols that could open the warren to, like, open up Fenner's warren, right? And I suppose he could channel power from there. So do you think that whatever it was Heberic acquired or caught from the jade statue, that made it so the warren opened and then sort of sucked the god out of there?
That makes sense.
And if so, how powerful is this thing?
It's definitely got something to do with the Otter trial and whatever happened thousands of years ago that caused the, whatever this metal is and this civilization that used to be there, right? But
Yeah.
as to what it exactly is, yeah, I can't say. I don't know.
And there was also something about how this ground should not allow any magic because of its proximity to the Utataral mines. And yet, what the jade thing did is clearly off magic. It seems to be like magic. So it's immune to the Utataral somehow.
That's a great point. That for whatever reason, it does seem to be immune to the Otataral deaths, that it's outside that sort of the otherwise typical rules of magic.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about this, Shannon? You want to just talk about it?
I'm just listening to you all. Because I really don't know. I mean, So what Varsha was saying, so he had his hands cut off by his cult or whatever when he was excommunicated, right? And then so maybe it was a connection to that hands that allowed him to yank Fenner to the physical realm. And then now he's vulnerable and stuck in the world. Or can he go back? I don't know. But it sounded like, Bork at least thought that he was in the world and stuck.
Yeah. Felison's assessment is that he didn't want to come. He's there unwillingly. I like the little joke there. We wanted the god's attention, not the god himself.
Yeah.
And he didn't want to come.
It can be very sassy. I love it.
It's also mildly comic that this god who defies description, right? Like Felison, he's so big that he's outside her field of vision almost. He showed up, like he got yanked out of wherever he was, and then he just disappeared. He ran away. It's like that's a funny image in my head. Like it's just sort of a boar running away from that scene, trying to hide himself. But yeah, I'm trying to figure out where the greenness came from in the description.
I don't know. I read it through it. I don't see anything green. I wonder if maybe.
I guess it was a proximity to the jade thing then.
Are his tattoos green? Heberic's tattoos?
No.
Black.
Yeah, black.
Are they maybe the Cult of Fenner in the third book? Are they dressed in green or something, maybe? No?
That's the gray swords, right? Right.
Yeah. I guess they're gray.
Yeah.
I guess.
Probably.
Maybe they're not. No, only their swords are gray. Their uniform is not necessarily gray.
Green,
That's right. Yeah.
green and gray is a great combination. That's a lot of.
Yeah, I wonder.
Anyway,
Maybe we associate green with, animals and like animal gods in folklore and stuff.
Hmm.
So
okay.
like
I
it's
literally don't.
primal, right?
No, if it was plants, I would agree with you. But like we're
I
talking
don't know.
wars.
Yeah, but like druids in D&D, they have green magic, right? Like their
Hmm.
magic is shown as green.
But that's tied to like leaves,
Yeah, but
like
they
hereditary.
transform into bears and
guess.
stuff.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
I do feel like that there is some association of like gods have been presented in like different cultures as like having green skin, but I don't know. My thought is it must be the jade statue.
Possible.
That
Yeah,
is, I
I'm
don't know.
pretty sure my coloring of Fenner came from the jade statue, if it's not explicitly described. Yeah.
He's not described as like orange brown either, is he? I also pulled that from nowhere, did I? I guess that's just because everything in this book in my head
Yeah.
is orange brown
Mm.
You probably got it from the desert. So
and
basically,
red.
we are
Yeah.
coloring Fenner from the surroundings. It's just what we are focusing on is different.
Yeah.
And it kind of makes sense because I think he's described as a projection, like not as a corporeal form, right? It's almost like he's a being of light. Or am I making that up too? I don't know.
No, he is. He is like
Yeah.
it's like a projection. Definitely. I mean, because the tattoos leave Haboric. Like
Yeah.
he no longer has the tattoos. They
Oh,
leave him. They
oh.
literally leave his body and become the like image and become the
I
god.
didn't realize that. He no longer has the tattoos?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Wow.
They
Okay.
definitely leave his body. And I'm pretty sure he's like without tattoos at the end of the chapter. But don't quote me on that.
Every week I come in thinking I can't be the only one who didn't understand what the hell just happened. And then every week someone, like every single one of you is like, I had no idea that happened. I feel so much better every week. It's not just me.
There's a lot of craziness. I mean, particularly the magic stuff is always the hardest to follow because it is often described with more like poetic language and very like, it's not real. The things that it does are not real. They're not things we're used to seeing, so it's hard to imagine. I guess if we're done, unless anyone else has thoughts with Finner,
I think Dan also had a Fenner-related topic. Should we talk about that too? I think Dan's was more about gods in general, but
Yeah, it's like we're not very respectful towards the gods in general in the world, right? They're kind of like they don't seem to be, how to say, worshipping them much. They're just fearful of them, sort of. No, not even all the time. Right?
We've also kind of gotten word from the gods that they're a little bit afraid of people, right? Because they're afraid that they'll find out that they're vulnerable. Didn't we get something like that?
yeah. And
100%.
I think it was in the first book, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, this was like such a grand proof of that statement because Fenner, Heberic, something he did, managed to pull down the god he worships from, I guess, the abyss is what Felicin says. But also this thing that Felicin says that I would be terrified if I were a god. She says, you're looking at it the wrong way. The god you no longer worship took your hands. So now you pulled him down. Don't mess with mortals. So it's just like, you basically warned him off of messing with you. And Heberic was commenting, and this was in response to Heberic commenting on how vulnerable Fenner now is because he's in the mortal realm. But Felicin says, no, you got your vengeance. You pulled him down for hurting you in the past. Which wasn't intentional, but he did it, right? He managed to do it somehow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if I was Finner, I would have shit my pants. Like you're just minding your business and you're warned, and then suddenly you're sucked out of it and thrown and locked in the mortal realm. Like, can you imagine? Like,
Yeah.
I also would run away. I'd be like, whatever just did that, I want nothing to do with it. I'm gone. Peace. Bye.
And we find out, and I think Fenner was maybe sort of remotely arranging for Heberick to be rescued somehow, right? Because the ship that is on its way to rescue them, maybe, is the people we find out are worshippers of Fenner or followers of
Yeah.
his cult of some sort. So maybe he had a hand in that, or maybe it was coincidence. It's unclear at the moment, but he was helping him behind the scenes and he got pulled down. No wonder he scampered away from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess we're maybe now ready to move on to the topic you wanted to bring up, Carl.
Well,
But
no. I mean, I think there's more to discuss here. Like, it is interesting how, before we came on the show, I talked about how I thought it was a bit strange, or at least a very distinct choice, that the emperor slash empress, and really I feel like we can only judge the empress since she's been our main touch point in the Book of the Fallen so far, of the Malazan Empire, is not aspected or associated with a particular god or the gods in general. Like you think of in real life, emperors often have a direct patron deity, or are themselves considered divine and are like related to the gods. I mean, this is true like all over the world, Western and Eastern culture. Like it's the divine right of kings, and it's like the empire of Malazan is just, while there are gods that people worship in it, the government itself seems to be very, and they employ religious like clerics, but they're very secular, and the role of emperor slash empress is very secular, it seems, which I guess I wonder if that is a distinct choice on Erikson and Esselmont's part, or if that is just kind of a byproduct of our very secular modern worldview. And certainly I think the notion of humans screwing with gods is very modern, and you could argue it's Gnostic, and I think there is some Gnosticism explored here, which in short, Gnosticism meaning like, killing the evil god, or like, there's a false deity that created the mortal physical material realm, and then they're actually the bad guy. But yeah, I don't know. It is interesting also that we don't seem to follow very many people who are active adherents to a particular divinity, or to several divinities, that they all seem maybe wary and afraid of the gods, but not particularly in awe or in love with a god.
Yeah, it's a bit weird in a sense. Because it's like, I guess because none of the gods are really connected apart from Hood with the afterlife, I think, right? It's not like they only help you in during your life. And then when you're dead, you just go to Hood and whatever. We don't know. I guess we don't know how you're being judged, but it's a whole separate thing, right?
That's a good point. The way the afterlife works, definitely, I think, informs worship. I mean, you would think in that regard that there would be more people who worship, but, or at least were more like, had more of a relationship with him. But similarly, I don't know, you could achieve immortality or ascendance through cultivating a particularly strong relationship with a god, I feel like. Uh, I mean, I'm not sure exactly, how that works out, but that seems like something that could happen. So, yeah, I don't know. Again, I wonder if it's an intentional choice for the world building and the narrative, or if, and it really is more the narrative, because I feel like there are people who definitely distinctly worship these gods. Like there are cults out there, but it's not ever our viewpoints. It's not the people, at least so far, not the people we're really like deep diving into, and following. Or if, yeah, it's just a subconscious thing, like, Erikson is writing from a very secular modern viewpoint, and so that comes out in his writing. Any other thoughts?
We haven't met enough worshippers, like specific worshippers of gods yet, I think. But there are priesthoods, which means that there is some form of worship there. But also, like the war cult, like the group in the ship, for instance, they were recruiting people to the cult of Fenor. Do they worship him or do they pray to him? Is that like what? Yeah, I think it is. I am curious, or like it is interesting to explore in the series, like what the relationship of people is with their god, like you both pointed out, and it's not always. There is, of course, the element of power that we already discussed. That certain mortals might be able to hurt gods, either the ones they directly worship or the ones they don't like. But there's also the aspect of how dependent on mortals are the gods are. Like, does their power depend on their worshippers, or if not, then what is the relationship between God and I guess people who follow them in some sense? And it's not always just someone who prays to the god for in exchange for things. I don't think. And yes, I actually had this question too about Hood. It would seem to me that Hood is maybe the most obvious god to pray to always, because he's responsible for what happens to you in the afterlife. But that doesn't seem to be the case. So I don't know if that means that each of the gods offers their own version of the afterlife, like what happens to you after death, or if everybody reincarnates in some form. I guess not, because Hood has a realm all of his own. But then, like, Hinduism also has reincarnation, but then there's a hell that is defined. So I've never been clear on who goes where when. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, in that sense, I think a lot of it might be reflecting real world religions and mythologies, maybe, but some of it also seems like conscious choice. To your point, Carl.
Isn't it? It seems like priests in religion are, and often in fantasy, or often in fiction, that they're used as a like a function of the government or a function of whatever ruling class there is, and it's less about faith and more about control. Just in general, it seems like it's very rare that there's some kind of religion, like a powerful religious religion that isn't either a cult or an arm of the ruling party, whatever it is.
Well, I think one of the things about Malazan is we're looking at such a large area. We're not limited to one nation or one area. And, so people are insanely different in different areas. And, some, we know, I think over on Quantali, there's maybe a little bit more organized religion. I get the feeling, because like I know Drek, worship is real big over there. And there's one island specifically that's like real big into worship of Drek. And over here in Seven Cities, I don't know. Yeah, it doesn't seem as big. It seems more, I don't know. I mean, do they worship the whirlwind god? I don't know. It's hard to tell what they really are. But I think that's really, it's just people are different everywhere.
Yeah.
Some places have more organized religion. Some people are more like the Wiccans. I would say they seem much more like shamanistic in how they approach it all. And so I don't know if they worship any specific gods, or they might worship different ones that aren't even recognized as gods by like the deck of dragons or whatever.
And maybe it's not that each person only prays to one god. Maybe it's the whole pantheon, right? Like most Hindus would probably believe in all the gods, but there might be some specifically that they worship more than the others. Like there are sects that are based on like these people worship Shiva more, or these people worship Vishnu more. So maybe the prominence is in like which god they spend most of their time on, versus okay, they only worship this god and nobody else. Uh, like I thought of that from something you said, Shannon. Like, do they worship the whirlwind goddess? But mm, I mean, clearly, a lot of them do right now, because I guess it's necessary that they do, or if not worship, at least follow in some form. I don't know if worship is the right word, but surely they had other beliefs before the rebellion started, and will continue and will stay as a baseline through the rebellion and the whirlwind.
Yeah, it seems distinct to me, and this I do feel must be intentional, that they do not, the Seven Cities populace do not worship Shaik, the whirlwind, as like their singular sort of definitive goddess, but she has become the totality of, and this is generalizing. I don't think everyone in the Seven Cities is like this, but certainly the revolutionaries, like their entire personality has become the whirlwind, which is maybe a flippant way of putting it, but you know, they're zealots. They're so obsessed with this revolution, you know, that they have become. It's just who they are now. I mean, it is everything they are. It has overtaken their entire lives, which is what leads to really a lot of the bleakest stuff we see in these chapters, right? Transitioning to what Steve and I wanted to talk about, that, you know, just some of the most horrific actions committed, the things we see, and the attitudes to children. It's just sickening and really hard to read, honestly, at times. It's a lot. The things Duaker sees are just horrendous.
I was wondering, when we're reading some of the parts of a rebellion and the people, like, are we supposed to think that the Malazan Empire was like tyrannical towards the people of the Seven Cities or whatever? Like, or these people just really want to be independent? Like, but it did seem like there was a lot of, how to say, like vengeance sort of thing, like obviously bad feelings, but I mean like remembering, oh, you treat us this badly, now we can finally take vengeance for what you did to us for this whole time. Do we know that that's what happened?
So I feel actually pretty confident about answering this one, even just based on these two books, but certainly we get more insight in later books. Um, the Malazan general strategy is go in, conquer a place, do one extreme and brief and quick mass killing,
Mm-hmm.
and then establish a peace and be mostly hands off
Yeah.
and kind of let them do their thing. And you have your governments around kind of overseeing things. But generally, you're like, people can worship who they want to worship. Like the Malazans are not imposing religious beliefs on these people. They're letting them do their thing. They're just they pay their taxes. They're a member of the empire. So tyrannical. I mean, is it tyrannical to go in and conquer someone and then, massacre their ruling class or a large swath of their population and then, be hands off, or not entirely hands off, but, then relax?
Mhm.
I don't know. Like we do see in the opening of this book, the red swords are indiscriminately slaughtering people. I guess you weren't here, but like last week, I drew a
Yeah.
parallel between the Red Sword's actions and the actions of the revolutionaries in the whirlwind. The Seven Cities revolutionaries. They're both, we like in short order see them both commit to indiscriminate slaughters where children are harmed.
Mhm.
And thankfully, Fiddler saves a couple girls from the Red Swords, resulting chaos, but no such luck with the, whirlwind.
Yeah. So
So
why are they so angry, I guess, then?
I think because they've been conquered,
Oh, okay. Just that.
In short, I would just say, yeah, I think they want to be free, and also because an atrocities have been committed. And the big one, the last little thing I was going to say was, we know that Aaron, which is not far away, I'm unclear, is Aaron one of the 7 cities? Or is it just on the same continent?
Not sure.
Okay.
Does the map
Well,
tell us?
if someone who's listening knows, please comment, because I have been wondering that this entire book. But Aaron, we know there was a huge massacre that happened, which is when the Talanai mass, went off and just started like murdering people indiscriminately. And we've heard people defend the Empress and be like, she didn't want that. Like, they just did that of their own volition. And then other people be like, no, the Empress must have ordered them. And, there's a lot of arguments about what exactly happened. But whatever happened at Aaron, it was really, really bad. And I do think we can say that, certainly a military campaign is the original campaign that conquered the 7 cities. I don't think was pleasant for the local populace. And so, yeah, I do think it's revenge and a desire for freedom.
There are also implications that Kellenwood would not have allowed the rebellion to get as far as it did, that Lassine somehow lost her hold on these provinces, so to speak. And we don't know if it's true, but there are a lot of people who seem to think that the rebellion wouldn't have been able to gain the momentum it has if Kellenwood were the ruler.
This is hard to say one way or another, but my own personal feelings about that is that this was coming regardless, and that this is kind of a classic, the good old days, the old emperor, the old king, things were better under him, and like everything would have been okay, and he was perfectly competent and everyone obeyed him, and Lassine is kind of, it's like the leader in charge, always gets the flack. And so I think,
yeah, that makes sense.
Is guilty of a lot of horrible stuff. I don't know that the revolution in particular, me personally, I don't feel like I would lay the blame at her feet.
Maybe she wants the revolution to happen so she can finally, quash the 7 cities or something. All the rebellious sentiment. And that's why she sent the Wiccans there. Who knows? Maybe it's all a master plan.
So I'm seeing it in the chat, our little chat. Shannon, you did a little research. Do you want to share that with our listeners? You are muted.
I was just looking at the wiki page, and according to this, it says like the city's changed a little bit over time, and but it does list Aaron as one of the 7 cities, and I think it references the glossary in this book. I don't know. I'd have to look that up.
Yeah,
I think I'm looking at.
Yeah, Aaron is on the map of the 7 cities in Deadhouse Gates, but then I don't know what the key is because there are a lot of places on this map. So I don't know which of these places are the 7 cities. Like the font for Aaron is different, and Ugarat and some of the other names, so maybe. But then so the Drizhna Ocean also has the same font, and the ocean is not a city. So but
Maybe it is.
Okay, it is in the glossary. Under place names, there's Aaron, Holy City, the site of the Imperial headquarters. Erlitan is a holy city. Gdanispan is just a city near Patson, so it's not. So no, it does tell us what the holy cities are in the glossary.
Nice. Cool. What were we talking about? Yeah, Emperor and Lasine,
The
who's now
atrocities.
Empress.
Yeah.
Whether yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
that makes
everyone,
sense. Yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
I don't know. Everyone always blames the current president, right? But a lot of time it's the previous president that did. So,
And I guess on that subject, I talked about the scale of that sandstorm thing that Fiddler and co end up in, and that Kalam also goes into at some point. And they can see the bones that are buried under there. And we talked about before civilizations under civilizations and whatnot. But right now it was just like a plain of sand, right? But all of that sand has been thrown up in the air and they can only see bones and everything that was buried underneath it. So that kind of power that has to have been brewing for longer than just Lasine's reign, which is what 11 years long, because in the prologue of Gardens of the Moon she was still Sully, like she had just renamed herself to Lasine. And was that the night that Kellenwed was assassinated, quote unquote assassinated? Um,
Yeah, I
what was
think
I saying? Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying yes. I believe
Okay,
that was the same night.
okay. Yeah, so she hasn't been ruling very long, and this kind of thing, whatever power has built up here, that feels like the work of a lot longer than 11 years. Or that is one bloody powerful god. Uh, well, I guess she only really showed herself once that book was opened. But we also talked about, they also mentioned that there was some general, Camestrello, is that his name? Which was another name that I got very confused by the first time around. But he was apparently someone that Lasine sent to negotiate with Shaikh, and they thought he was dead. But instead, he turned out he went over to the other side and is now a general for their army, or whatever the equivalent is. So, and that was so at the time that that happened, Shaikh had already accumulated enough power to talk him to her side, right? So, to your point, Carl, I guess this had to have been coming together since Kellenwith's time, maybe.
Yeah, and I would go so far as to say that the themes of the book indicate that this was kind of long in the running, and that the seven cities themselves, its ancient history, the land itself is sort of rejecting the Malazans. And the question is not, was this going to happen, but how are the Malazans going to react, and will they be able to keep control?
if it is a theme throughout the whole book, it's like time and all the different layers and ancient stuff, right? Through like the Otter Trial talking about the sediments and the different civilizations, and also, Mappo and whatever talking about all the previous civilizations in this land. Like time and the passage of time seems to be one of the sort of background topics about this book, right? Because it is mentioned all the time.
I think it's distinct too that the whirlwind is a natural disaster, right? It's like this representation of the violence of the desert. It's not, represented in a human form yet. It's a goddess, but it's also like a force, right? It's the land itself in many ways. And the land, you can't, you know, it impacts empires as much as politics, right? Like we can like to believe, we control the environment, and to some degree that's the case, but inevitably the environment impacts us, whether it's comes to resource management or, natural disasters. And I mean, that's really what the whirlwind is just a ginormous natural disaster that happens to be at the heart of an uprising, an extremely violent uprising. And this, as we talked about last week, this book certainly highlights that it's not as if one side or the other is necessarily more like morally upright. It's specific groups and specific individuals within the societies, the larger armies, you could say, that are the ones who are in some ways upstanding and are heroic, like Coltane here, right? And the Wiccans who are leading the refugees. Like, they, in my mind, are far and away the most heroic characters we're following right now amidst the uprising. While, the Malazan army has, like writ large, the Empire has committed atrocities, and the Red Swords are, they like worship war, they worship, or no, they specifically worship like the Empress, don't they? Or something like that. I forget what we learned, that they covered that, but the point being, they're like religious extremists. And spoiler alert, so is the revolutionaries, and they all slaughter indiscriminately. It's all red, right? To get back into that color symbolism. That was another thing you missed, Dan. And I noticed that both sides are painted in red.
Phone agrees.
What thoughts do you have about all this, Steve?
About the rebellion, like uprising, and the war and the violence.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this is kind of tied into what you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, I think something it kind of reminds me of A Court of Broken Knives by Anna Smith Spark. Kind of the idea that because you had mentioned that Malazan armies, they go in and they do a mass killing, and they kind of set the bar for what they're capable of and what they're willing to do. And in her books, I kind of, the idea was that when armies are armying and they're fighting and they're in combat, that they almost become something else. That when they're not fighting or committing violence, they crave it. Like, they need to do something. They need to exert power and control when they're in that kind of environment. And if they're not fighting or killing or ruling or doing something, then they crave it. And I kind of feel like that's what's happening here, is that the armies are rolling in and they're committing these heinous acts of violence against a lot of some of the more disturbing portions of these chapters were what they did to the innocent people who were there, who were just living their lives, and then taking the young girls and doing things to them. So I think that's kind of, is that once people get that bloodlust, and we've seen it throughout history of people that they commit these acts of, they commit these horrible things because they are in that environment, and they kind of feed off each other, and they just do things that they would have never thought themselves capable of doing. And I think that's maybe what Erikson is going for here, is just the ugliness of war and what people are capable of, both sides. And I think we talked about in book one about when Whiskey Jack and the soldiers planted explosives in the streets, and they're supposed to be kind of the quote unquote good guys, and they look, it's hard to root for someone like that, but I think it's all about survival. And when they're trying to survive, and they're trying to they're trying to exert themselves against whatever they're fighting, and I think everyone gets some blood on their hands. But when you go over, I just think what struck me in these chapters were just that the people who pay the most are the innocents, or the innocent people who probably didn't have a way to defend themselves at all. So I think they're the ones who really pay the price. I think throughout history, they're the ones who pay the price. It's just the people who are just hanging out, doing their thing, and next thing they know, they're being strangled by their loved ones' entrails. So
Yeah. Yeah. Ain't that the
that
truth?
was pretty rough.
That's crazy. I mean, what an insane image. I mean, all the violence that, as it's described, as Duiker sees it, is just atrocious. And I want to take this and kind of talk about like the horror elements, and some of that is just the violence, but like another great symbol, but that also is just a wonderful dramatic scene, a horrible scene, that with layers of depth to it, is the blood flies scene, when the blood flies attack Felison, and they permanently scar her face. And God, I'm reading all of that and how she has to push out each one individually. This little like maggot squirms out. Or larva. It's horrible. It makes my skin crawl. I hate it. It's wonderful. It's just the worst.
I mean,
Well
isn't
done,
it
Steven
similar
Erikson.
to some flies that you have in like South America? I can't remember what it's called, like bot flies or
There are
something,
definitely
right?
some messed up insects out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Wasn't she trying to save someone when she wasn't able to get kind of under the or into the mud? Wasn't she trying to save someone else?
yeah,
I
she
And
was
then
think
she
she
trying
didn't
to
was
get.
help.
trying to help Heberick first, but it turned out he didn't need it, but he didn't know that, and neither did she. Sorry, go ahead, Carl.
I was just going to say what you said.
Okay.
Exactly. And I mean, we're given now question to believe whether or not in the mines she needed to help them by sleeping with Benneth, right? And
Yeah.
Bowden says they got food for favors they did, to higher ups, and that they were, surviving well enough on their own, and her actions were her own. And
I mean, they
Bennett
could
just
have
gave
told
them
her.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for telling me now.
I know.
exactly.
Were they really going to leave her behind? I was mad. Were they really?
Yeah. I will say, reading these chapters, it did make me uh I do believe that Haboric genuinely deep down would not have left her behind. Bowden, I don't know. Maybe not. Haboric, I do believe, even with how much shit he talks, would have gone back for her. But I definitely felt like I put my foot in my mouth reading these chapters then, or like in the previous conversations, and with how, they're all just horrible to each other. And certainly Felicin acts like a diva and is needlessly mean, but like the two men just like talk down to her and don't communicate with her. I mean, like you said, like they never told her that she didn't need to, like she was clearly thought she was like doing something worthwhile. She wasn't just like this teenager isn't just going out and sleeping with random men for no reason. Like they could have maybe like really checked on her and like, had a real conversation, but that was not in the cards. And then of course, they're pushed to the extreme, which God, I hate. I hate reading. It's so well done. The dangers of the desert, like how miserable they are and how hot, and the water rations. That always gets to me when I see it in movies. Like it's just one of those things that I have a visceral reaction to, and Steven Erikson writes it wonderfully. It's terrible to read. These chapters were really hard at times. I was so grateful anytime we turned the page and it was Ikariam and Mappo. I'm like, oh yeah, these are my guys. Like here they are, like on their little adventure. This is wonderful. And then you start following the humans, and it's just like misery, just the worst thing after the worst thing. And I'm gonna circle back to the blood flies. That it's like these bloodthirsty creatures, that just swarm you. It's not one, it's a horde of them. And they all together like try to devour you, and they plant their little eggs inside you. And it
Yeah.
feels like, that's what's going on with the humans too, right? And it's just sickening. And then of course, Felicin, who you have the added drama of Felicin, who defined herself in so many ways as a sex object. She was like, this is how I can create agency, is by being used by men, and some women, but mostly men. And her beauty was a big part of that. And then that is damaged, right, by all of these scars
Mm.
across her face. It's
The most disgusting part, I think it's like when like they go in her mouth and she chews them, and then she's like,
Oh
they say
god.
like when she drinks the antidote and it's like spitting like rice or something over maggots. It was
Oh
like
god.
Yes.
Horrible.
I don't want to think about it.
No.
That was pretty bad.
I know we talked about her a lot last episode, but I think seeing in these few chapters, I think her personality changes a bit. From her standpoint, she was doing all these things because she thought, number one, that she was helping herself survive, and number two, she was helping her friends. And she did get, I think it was Habork moved to another place where he wouldn't have made it in the previous place. So in her mind, she's doing all these things for her friends, and then she comes to find out that they didn't really consider, they didn't really see it that way. They just thought, well, we made it on our own. So I can kind of see why she's taking on some diva, because she did go full diva towards the end of chapter 7 or 6, 7, or what chapter we in? Last chapter we read.
7? Yeah.
Yeah, she did take on some diva tendencies, but I mean, you can't really blame her for going through what she's been through and doing all the things she did, thinking she's helping, and they're like, yeah, well, we had plans, and you weren't really, like, you were kind of an afterthought, and you didn't really help us. We did it on our own, like, thanks for nothing. So it's, I can see she's a little bit better.
Well, she's 16, right? So she's like a teenager.
That's too, yeah. She reminds me so much of Rin from the Poppy War. No spoilers for the Poppy War, but one of those characters that people disagree on quite a bit. But yeah, I think you kind of I can see where she's coming from.
Right. I mean, you're not supposed to read her story and be like, she's being really great, like that's not the point. It is like she's gone through so much, and it's left her just like deeply broken, and her two closest allies are so unhelpful to her and are not nurturing her at all, and they are the adults. And I think at the same time, like, she is awful to them, and particularly to Haborek, who, like, when she's just like, let's just leave him to die, and all that shit. Like, that's horrible. That's hard to read too. It's right, exactly. It's brutal the way they just chip at each other, and so I am sympathetic to Bowden being like sick of her shit. But at the same time, Bowden has not net, like, what has he done for her? He's just kind of been savagely taking care of himself and maybe Haborek, it's kind of implied. You make a great point, Steve, that she did get Haborek moved to that different area. So that is at least a distinct, like, she has done things that they seemingly never thanked her for, never showed any gratitude for. So I do feel like it's probably a kind of nuanced middle ground where they probably did, like, Benneth probably did shortchange them, but also some of her actions did lead to them getting better accommodations. Was that me?
Yeah, talking about them. One thing on this reread is I'm actually a little more sympathetic for Bowden this time around. Like, I think the first time I read this, I really thought bad of him because we only see him through Felison's eyes, and she clearly thinks very ill of him. But when I'm reading it this time, I'm like, I think she's really got him pegged wrong. I mean, he clearly is helping Haborek. I mean, he could have just went back, grabbed the food, and just left Haborek. Now, and one thing I really like is we don't know why. Like, is he doing it for an altruistic reason, or is he doing it for, some other reason because he thinks that their best chance is the three of them working together? Like what exactly are his motivations? We don't know. But I think he is probably a better person than I originally thought he was at this point.
I love how enigmatic he is. Like, he is just so mysterious. It is really wonderful. Because he's hard to get a read on.
Because if he really just wanted to survive, you think he could just kill both of them, take the food, and walk off, and that'd probably be his
For
best
sure.
bet to surviving.
For sure.
Yeah. And for some reason, he seems to think that Heberic being alive is necessary for their survival, because he when that's what prompts him to do the thing with Heberic's hand on his chest, right? That pulls Fenner down. He tells Felicin that Heberic, like that, he's the only hope for their survival or something like that. And yeah, Felicin is sort of projecting, I think, a lot of her bad thoughts onto him. It seems like first she's afraid that he might take advantage of her, which we don't know, as she's so used to men taking advantage of her by default that it's like maybe that's what she wants to believe about him, or that's what her default is for about him. And then she says, oh, maybe he'll eat the guy, like he's looking at me as if he wants to eat me because I'm so plump, and like she's afraid of him. And then she ends up like projecting that onto, like, I don't know. She says something about how they can split up Heberic or something horrible like that. And he tells her off. He says, "You keep your awfulness to yourself. I'm not putting up with this." So it eating each other seems to be, based on that response, very far away from Borden's mind. But somehow Felicin thinks that that's where his thoughts are, because that's where her thoughts are for some reason. And she's also sort of being willfully cruel to Heberic in her thoughts, in the sense of he's dragging us down, we're going to die because of him, and so on and so forth. And again, like, I feel like you talked about how her being an unreliable narrator last time, Carl, but like I don't know if she's just being angry at the fact or possibility of being left behind by them. So she's like, yeah, see, I can leave you behind too. Here, I can do it in my thoughts. Or is it like, does she genuinely believe that, like, would she go through with leaving him behind, for instance, like the way would Heberic have gone through with leaving her behind? I don't know. I got really angry at him when he said, oh, you seem to be almost happy and settled where you were, like that's what you wanted, so I wasn't going to take you back with me. What an awful thing to say, regardless of whether she was actually helping them. For whatever reason she's putting herself through that, I don't think there is any doubt that she likes where she is. But that said, what did you guys think of her fixation with Bennett? Like, I'm kind of glad they didn't tell her in advance of their escape plan, because I feel like she would have ratted them out to Bennett, like not deliberately, like she would have said, "Oh, we're going. Do you want to come?" But um, but like, to claim that they really would have left her behind. There were also like 2 packs. And it's unclear whether they had enough food for 3 people or whether they were sharing 2 people's supplies
Yeah.
with 3. So anyway, I was mad that they were genuinely planning to leave her behind, maybe, seemingly. But also, her fixation on Bennett made it clear that they shouldn't have told her beforehand. But that was so sad, though. Like, that, whatever that man did to her, how he used her, somehow that was the only bit of affection she perceived during her time there. Like, Heberic, and maybe Borden to a certain extent, we don't know, were taking care of her in whatever misguided fashion they were. But or maybe not, I don't know, but whatever affection or lack of it, attention, I think, not affection, that's not the
Mm.
right word, attention she got from Bennett, that was enough to make her desperately want him to come with her. And she feels upset at the possibility that he might have died, when what you might expect from someone who was used as she is by this man is unmitigated hatred for him.
I think, in my thesis in brief is she is a deeply mentally ill, traumatized teenager. But to get a little more specific, Bennett was her rock, her, like you said, her one source of attention, and I think you could say affection. However disturbed that affection is. He was her association with happiness, even though a lot of that happiness was the drugs he hooked her on. And, she did get some pleasure out of sex. So he became, she associated him with all the happy things. However, like, horrible and corrupt they may be, he represented that for her. And to accept that he didn't really care for her and was a scum, it would be to accept that she was living a lie. She has been lying to herself, and that he doesn't love her. He doesn't care about her, and that she was on her own. And on top of that, that she'd basically sold herself to him. And not that she, was actually making some sort of connection with him. And I think she does, in some way, feel like she had a connection with him. It's like the worst sort of type of toxic relationship.
And it is, I guess, a portrait of an abusive relationship, right? Like it is a very intensely abusive relationship, but also I think oftentimes when you look at someone and say, well, why don't you leave them, and someone's being abusive to them, it's not always an easy answer, and it's never as
Yeah.
easy as you might think it is. Like, just I think that exploration here is also quite brilliant. Like, difficult as it is to read, it's never simple, it's never straightforward. And looking in from the outside, it's not just he's being horrible to you, get out. It's no, she has a genuine attachment to him, however misguided that is, and she needs to work that out for herself.
Yeah. It's also worth noting that, like, he symbolizes power for her, right? Like, he is what she wants to be in some way, even if he is, like, I think a lot of his power is actually very flaccid and, like, easy to break. But she looks at him and she sees someone who has so much control and so much power, which she feels she does not. And it's easy then to project that onto him and latch on to him because of that.
Could be a Stockholm syndrome kind of thing where, you become attached to whoever has got control over you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Was there a quote about inertia in this section, or am I remembering that from a different book? But I'll try and find it. But there was something else Felicin related that I wanted to bring up. Nope, I think we covered it. Anyone else have Felicin related topics?
Yeah, I was gonna ask Shannon, what your first read, you were anti the character. Are you still coming around? Are you still pro or?
Well, I was coming around last week. This week reminded me why I didn't like her.
That's fair. She is awful in these chapters.
This is kind of her. I think it's somewhat her lowest right now. So, I mean, and then one thing we didn't talk about too is you got to throw in also is that she's also got to be going through withdrawal at this point. I think it's like 6 days into this, so like that's never going to make anybody a pleasant person.
No, that's a great point.
Mm.
She's also dealing with poisoning from the and like curing the poisoning from the blood flies.
Yeah.
Yeah, that too. I found the quote about inertia. It's from Mapo with his flashback to when the Nameless Ones gave him his new responsibility. Yet he'd stayed, nailed to a single tree, but only because he'd grown used to the scenery around it. It was amazing what could be endured when in the grip of inertia. At the time, I thought of abusive relationships when I read this quote, but I didn't translate that to Felicin. But speaking of how things connect across, different characters, like what is explored across them. I think this is brilliant. Like what Mapo says here could just as easily apply to Felicin, I think.
That's a great point. Want to talk about Mappo and Ikariam?
Yes.
Sounds like there's a lot to talk about, but there's some stuff. First of all, they found the broom.
Yes.
Great success.
Good job. Excellent. They leveled up in the game that Past is having them play. Next quest, go to the desert for some reason.
Yeah. Why do they do everything he tells them to do?
My sense is that Ikariam feels he does not have, because he can't remember his past, he doesn't have a path forward. And so he is looking for direction, and Pust, as strange and, whatever his Pust is, he gives them a direction. And that direction even potentially involves divine interference.
What do you guys have theories, people who don't know the answer, on what that boat is that they found underground?
It used to be a sea, and then there's a boat left.
But
Or
they
something
think
to do with Warrens, probably. It's always Warrens, isn't it? I don't know.
It's always when in doubt, Warren.
I mean...
Yeah, what's curious about that is we've heard a lot that Raraku's was a sea. So it could have been the remnants of, given how deep underground it is, it could have been the remnants of the former sea-ness of Raraku, but it doesn't look very old.
Oh wait, I just remembered what it is. Okay, I'm not gonna say. I think I just remembered. Okay, yeah.
So Steve, you're probably the only one left who can guess.
Warrens.
Warrens.
All right, we'll see. We'll find out. Past has also been. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say I don't know that I have a lot to add about their section here. It's interesting learning about Mappo's origin story with the Nameless Ones and how he's kind of plucked out and of his tribe, and the Nameless One looks human as she is described, or human adjacent. And then, but I just love the ending of chapter 7, where when you realize who it is that Fiddler and Apsalar and Crocus have stumbled across, it just gets me so excited. Like, I love it. I love when two disparate groups cross ways, and especially if one of them saves the other in a moment of need. And it's just wonderful and well done.
I agree. That was one of my favorite moments in the book. Sorry, go ahead, Shannon.
I was just going to say, speaking of Mappo, though, one thing I thought about earlier was you said how, you sometimes you have images in your head, even though you know they're wrong. And I don't know why, but Mappo forever will be in my head as the green kind of pig alien from the old Star Wars movies. I don't know why, but every time I try to picture him, that's what he comes out as.
Wait, that's where the boar comes from. It's the Star Wars aliens.
Like the guards from Jabba's palace? Like those guys?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, one of those guys. That's every time I try to picture Mappo, that's all I can think of. Is he's just this pig alien.
That's amazing.
Now I'm kind of wishing I hadn't looked this up. I haven't seen Star Wars, but now I'm wishing I hadn't looked this up. No, it's fine. See, there's even a picture of Mappo with Ikarium in the search result. There isn't, but
and Ikarium's the one that's actually supposed to be green.
Yeah, Ikarium's green.
So I know it's wrong, but
sometimes pictures do what they gotta do. Oh, all right.
Yeah, Steve. I guess true. Ikarium is green. I can't imagine him as blue or something for some reason, but
he's dark skinned in my head. Again, I don't know why. I don't.
You're talking about Ikarium or Mappo?
Mappo. Oh, Mappo.
Wait,
I was talking about Ikarium.
Who's
Yeah, Aquarium's green.
but
Yeah.
the pig alien is Mappo or Ikarium?
I think of the pig alien as Mappo.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he looks like a Mappo to me.
He's even got the little tusk things.
I see
Okay.
Yeah,
that.
and he's got the bigger tusks.
Yeah. Yeah.
I will say, I mean, Varsha, you're right that Mappo is dark skinned.
Okay. Okay. So I didn't
He's
make that up.
described as having like deep brown skin.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I can never trust what people are wearing in my head. Because I guess clothing's not described a lot, so everybody's wearing Indian clothes in my head.
Everyone's
Everybody.
wearing a talaba. I can tell you that much.
What?
Talabas are described all the time, which I believe is some
That's
kind
true.
of head wrap.
Yeah, but there are Indian versions of that thing, so it's fitting with my worldview.
I
But
mean,
yeah, go ahead.
that's why it is interesting. Like, I like a lot to see, for example, in the Lord of the Rings, because so many illustrations are like, oh, we just take from the movies, and that's like the canon now. But it's always fun to look at like the old pre-movies illustrations and how all the different author interpret in their mind what things look like. It's very cool seeing all these different interpretations, and it's the same like with us. Each one sees
Absolutely.
different things and reading the same stuff.
Yeah, yep, I agree. I like this is what I do with pronunciations. I sure there are glossaries and pronunciation guides, but I hear people pronounce things and I pick my favorite if it's different from what I have in my head. But same with images, I think. I have a picture in my head. Actually, I don't think I do that with I almost never look up art, fan art and stuff. But it's usually I stick with what's in my head, I think.
Yeah, for listeners, definitely, and Dan, definitely don't look up fan art because that is how I've had multiple things on my first read through spoiled. Do not look up fan art. It's awesome. There's lots of it out there. Wait until you finish the books, or be very careful about where you're looking at fan art. I will say, Ikarium for me is always just a half orc from Dungeons and Dragons. Like that's just what I have in my head. And I honestly don't think that's that far off base because he's like half Jagged, and Jaggeds are orcs. Full stop.
Yeah, I guess it is all fan art because there's no official art apart from the covers of the book, right?
There are like a couple of the like special editions that have some art that I think is more official.
Oh, okay. But is it art that's approved by Steven Erikson? Okay.
Yeah, Subterranean Press. They're their editions. I've downloaded and saved some of the pictures on my computer because they're gorgeous.
Yeah, that's worth looking
Yeah.
up for
Yeah.
the books we have read.
Okay. I don't know. For some reason, when you started talking about fan art, I was like, I wonder if there's like spicy fan art. Because that's
Probably.
usually what a lot of fan art is online.
Interesting. I did
I
not
need-
know that. More reason for me to
I don't
know.
know, but I'm just wondering, like, at this point, if there is.
Oh no, I need my Ikarium Mappo fanfic. Where
Oh
is it?
yeah, I'm sure there is like a lot of fanfic about these different character
The
pairings. There must
steamier the
be.
better.
There must be.
No, actually, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. That does seem like a duo that would definitely have, fan art and fanfic written about them.
Okay, I guess for
Especially-
next time, let's prepare for homework. What's your favorite pairing? Your favorite imaginary pairing for these books?
Yes. This is a great series for it because there are so many great duos.
True, yeah.
Yes.
I want someone to throw a really wild pairing though. Like my favorite, or if you guys are familiar with the term crack ships, which I don't know the origin. Maybe it's like you ship something as if you're on crack. But basically, it's like something that is so unrealistic, would never happen. These two characters maybe never actually talked in whatever series you're referencing, but for some reason you ship them. And I would love to know everyone's Malazan crack ships.
Can I bring in characters from other series?
Why not?
Okay.
Yeah.
There are no
That
rules.
sounds unrealistic, sure.
No, what was I going to say? Oh my God. I'm going to say something slightly more serious.
Was it on the subject of Ikarium and Mappo? No?
I guess not.
Hmm.
I don't know. It's gone from my brain. Like Ikariam, my memory has left me.
Must not have been important then. If you
Oh,
forgot
Let's
about it.
move on.
You know that meme about the child in the like
Which
that's yeah, that's Ikariam all the time. No, I that actually was tied into that, which is we have learned a little more. Things are becoming clearer and clearer. Uh, it's implied, it's not directly stated, that the Nameless Ones are the ones who assigned Mappo to Ikariam. And then on top of that, that Ikariam has anger issues and seems to be capable of great violence. And that's just something to keep your eye on if you're a first-time reader. And that's all I'll say about that. And if you missed that,
So
we did learn those things. So that is not a spoiler.
earlier we mentioned the Fenner cultists. So we met Stormy, Kessler, and Truth.
Yes.
The Marines, which I love all three of them. They're great. That was harsh though. The like, what is your what is your tab worth? 72 cicadas, and then he ends up getting killed. I was like, oh man. And I forget what Gessler said, but it was pretty cold.
Yeah.
yeah.
That exchange was interesting. He started off as a cruel seeming person, but I don't know if we've met more of him yet, but we know that he's off right now to maybe rescue Heberick.
Yeah.
And then Culp. I really liked that whole battle scene when they were trying to get out of that town. Culp is the illusionist, and that was really cool how he was using his powers, out in the sea with the fog and making the sounds show up in different places. And there was the wall of fire and stuff, but also just the subtle things he could do, which I thought were really cool. Like, it showed how somebody with this power of just illusion could be so handy in this kind of a situation.
Yeah. And
I really
Dwecker,
like Culp,
sorry, go ahead.
actually, in general.
Yeah, he's growing on me.
I feel similarly. He's one of the characters who stood out to me the most, partially because I don't remember where his story goes. I don't know what happens. I did not remember him at all, and I'm really enjoying seeing him. He has a lot of great moments and scenes. Like you mentioned, Shannon, his illusion magic is awesome. What was it? Was it Duiker who was like, "Oh my God, you did that giant fire? You've been saving that up this entire time?" And he was like, "Yeah, no, that's an illusion.
It's
Run!"
nothing.
It's
Yeah.
nothing.
Run, damn
It
it.
was nothing. Oh, don't be humble. No, I mean, it was nothing.
It's so good. It's so good.
Yeah. And I was
And then,
terrified. Sorry, go ahead, Shannon.
no, you go.
Yeah, I was saying I was terrified that they have a high mage, and the only mage person of the mage cadre is here, off on a rescue mission. And then I remembered Sormo Inath is still with the company, and he's probably much more powerful than Kalp. And does Dwecker see images of sorcery? Its entire city's laid waste. Dwecker on his way to Coltane, I think. Someone mentioned that before, those horrifying images. But there was sorcery involved, at least at Hissar, right?
Yeah, in the distance. He did see sorcery in the distance.
Okay.
Yeah.
He saw that a high mage doing something, and it was scary.
Yeah.
Which
And
we
then,
we
with
know that's
Culp,
Comist Relo.
yeah, Comistrillo is the one who's after Coltane.
Right.
We
Yeah.
don't know who this was up in this town with Culp, because I think he figured out it was a woman. Right? I thought that there was a point where he realized that, and I don't know. I don't remember like who this is. I presume we'll find out eventually, but I don't know, because that seemed kind of a very specific detail to give us.
Yeah. I don't know if
Yeah.
it's someone we've met before or someone who will become important.
But I was gonna say, on the other hand, I like Culp. In chapter 7, we met a diverse that was just terrifying. I can't remember his name. Starts with a G, but he's like the
Ghrelin?
thousand rats,
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
something like that. Like that's horrifying.
That shit was scary. That's what I'm talking about. Again, the horror elements in this book are off the wall. I mean, it really is between, yeah, the creepy divers and, the violence done and some of the animals, just like the Cape moss,
Yeah,
super creepy.
Yeah.
They're silent.
I mean, I was right in that Fiddler was willing to kill themselves with a cusser rather than let this rat get a hold of them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's horrible. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's the Aptorian too.
Yeah, the
Mm.
Aptorian is so creepy, but for some reason I always think of Ap as being kind of cute. Just
Yeah, I don't
like,
know
gonna
why.
follow along, like fighting wolves, snarling at Kalam, like they're man's best friend.
It feels like it's supposed to be creepy, but it doesn't feel super creepy for some reason.
Yeah,
Ever.
I don't know why. Again, like I do. Maybe this is partially. I'm gonna stop talking.
Feels just shy to me.
Shy, exactly.
Yes.
Just warms up. You gotta let him sniff your hand.
I don't know why, but that's how it feels.
Shy. I guess I can see that. But also I think the word apt is kind of cute, so
Hmm.
it might be that adding to the sense of cuteness of
I
the
think you're
creature.
right, honestly. I think calling a demon apt, I cannot help but think, oh, it's just a little sweetheart. Hey, apt. Like, I just want to scratch your head. Oh no,
Yeah,
you bit my fingers off.
but it is interesting that it's got like 3 legs and one eye, because it's like, I don't know. Is there any? I was trying to think when I was reading that. Is like there any animal which is got 3 legs? No, it's always like pairs of legs, right? I guess eyes. Some insects have like a central eye on top of their like 2 normal eyes or whatever, but I don't
It's
know.
described in a very alien way. I dig
Yeah,
it. I like the how
very
he
interesting.
Steven Erikson describes demons.
Must be very stable. Demon, 3 legs.
What did you all make of the swarm of Cape moths that formed a face that Duiker saw?
When did that happen? Wait.
Duiker looked and saw a swarm of Cape moths form a face.
Ah, true.
And he wondered, he was like, Hood isn't normally that melodramatic. So who is that? What's going on there?
Are there other gods of death?
Yeah.
It and I like the little thought he had there where he wondered whether like where he thought to himself that like Hood doesn't like sort of he yeah, I think melodramatic is the word he used. But like he doesn't he's not so egoistic that he goes around making a big deal out of himself, right? But he has many aspects. Yeah, that's the part that I fixated on, that there are many harbingers of death and Cape Moths among them, but apparently Hood Hood is abroad in some form, maybe, or death is. Mm,
It's definitely one of those like appropriate, there's a lot of death in these chapters, but a part of me like I don't remember what that is a portent of. We ever find out like more details. So I'm genuinely curious. Like I feel like there's more to it. And oftentimes I feel like when people read portents in this series, they're not seeing the full picture, or they're like misreading it. Usually it's made pretty explicit when they're like dead on. And so I feel like there's something else going on there, but I don't know what.
You're muted, Varsha.
sorry. Yeah, I was saying I agree with maybe not the whole picture, but also I like the sense of trepidation that Duck, I was going to say Dakar, that's a different book. Duiker had.
No,
the
for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, it's scary. Again, I think the Cape Moths, they're creepy as hell. They're silent. They travel towards, death, dead bodies, corpses. Like, they're like gray and, just floating together through the sky. It's, ugh, spooky.
Yeah, I agree. I wanted to talk about how menacing the whirlwind, like the sandstorm. Is there one, or are there multiple? I know, like the one, the sandstorm that Fiddler and Co entered. That's the one. Like the picture I have of it is it's large and sort of encompassing the entire desert, and at this point, it has all the sand in the desert, and or most of it anyway, enough of it that you can see what's buried underneath it all. Uh, and then we know Felison sees something that looks like a storm from the distance. I don't know if that's cities on fire, the Felison and group, if it's the cities that are on fire from like all the stuff that Duiker has been following along, or if I don't know how close they are to Raraku, if they are able to see the whirlwind. Um, and I guess Kalam has entered the sandstorm from a different place. So, and and I guess the idea that they have to like walk through it, and when they come out, it's not at the other end of the storm. It's probably going to inside the storm that they go to. It's yeah, I just love how enormous that whole thing feels, and how menacing it is that you can see all these pictures of destruction from far away, from so
Y-
far away.
Yeah, I think Fellison is seeing it. And another little anecdote from that we hear, or I guess it's a theory. We don't know definitively one way or another yet. In the book, I forget who says this, but that if the revolution, the insurgency is inside the whirlwind, then surely that means that there is a large space housing thousands upon thousands of people that is clear of the storm. And it is taking our, our heroes, our protagonists, a long time to travel through the stormy parts of the storm. So just imagine how big that is, that there's potentially this enormous clear space at the heart of the storm, and yet there's still this enormous sandy whirlwind around it that is difficult to break through. And I imagine how easy it would be to get lost too, right? You would have no way of direction. You couldn't see the sky, like horrible. It just makes me feel dirty. I want to go take a shower. Ugh.
Yeah. Actually, I feel like I might get like my stuff gunk in my face and like be
Yeah.
beaten down. I know you have to like tie horses' eyes so they don't get hurt with within sandstorms, right? Anyway, Kalam and group are in there for days. No, just Kalam by himself is in there for days. Was it Kalam or Fiddler and group who think to them, who decide that if they don't stay on the road, that they will get lost, and that's bad. Like getting off the road is terrifying, and somehow they are near a place where a lot of the soul taken and divers are fighting. I don't know if they are converging here, but they are fighting there, a lot of them. So they are coinciding with the not the path of hands. That's a warren, with the route to it somehow.
I mean, don't we know, aren't they going to the temple where Mapernicarium and Iskal Post were there? Because they went down
Mm.
there and they saw like, oh,
Mm.
this must be where they're all going towards, where they're all searching. So I guess they are nearby, right? Because then Mappo and Icarium meet them, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that makes sense.
we're given a name to Tremorlore, the
Yeah.
Azap house.
True.
So Fiddler and Co. meeting the group from outside the sandstorm, and Mapo, etc., coming from inside. Is that
I
true, or
guess so.
are they at different? Like,
Oh yeah, I guess that's the implication. No, that's a good point. Or did they venture into the sandstorm too, and we just didn't witness them actually do that? Unclear.
I don't remember.
yeah. But yes, I do like that scene, and I think Dan, you were talking earlier about the time and the sense of time. It almost feels like the storm again. The image that it's revealing is of like the buried things. It's almost like the peeling back of time, right? Like the civilizations. This is again the equivalent of the city underneath shrugging. This is not doing a lot more than shrugging, but it's sort of making itself known, the former civilization, in whatever form, like in this rising whirlwind. And yeah, again, I love that imagery and like how it all ties together with everything we've read before about earlier civilizations.
Past is coming to the surface. Definitely
Yes.
makes you wonder if all the past is coming back, if things with a certain duo we're following might come back as well.
I like that. Okay, that's a fantastic point. And that is what Icarium is trying to do, right? He's trying to dig up his past in some sense, or lacking it, trying to find a way to it, or find a different history of
Absolutely.
sorts. Oh, that's brilliant.
Oh, it's crazy once you start digging in how
Yeah.
like interconnected everything is in these books. It's wild. The thematic depth is just, it's unreal. I have a new appreciation on this read through in particular for how like well it was thought out.
Yeah. And it's so subtle too. It's not, I mean, it is. That's that's why it's all, oh, and this is connected to this, but it's never like overtly signaling. It's just there. If you care to like dig in a little bit. I love that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
On that note, one of my quote is it's like the pre-epigraph, the like epigraph for all of book 2, Whirlwind. It's a Pardew epitaph, so something they put on their graves, right? I've walked old roads this day that became ghosts with coming night and were gone to my eyes with dawn. Such was my journey, leagues across centuries, in one blink of the sun. I think that is not only beautiful language, but very much is touching upon that theme we were just talking about.
Yes. I agree. I had that highlighted too as one of my quotes. And the other one I had was the inertia one. Do you guys have any, Shannon and Dan?
I'm not a quote guy.
Oh, Shannon, you're muted. Or are you okay?
Said I like the short and simple Toblikai saying at the beginning of chapter 7, "Death shall be my bridge."
Nice. I was trying to understand or make sense of it.
Yeah, I also think it's cool and I have no idea what it means. Like bridge to what? Bridge. What are we building the death bridge to? The afterlife? Or is it something else?
I mean, I presume something with the afterlife, but I don't really know either.
Makes sense. What did you guys think of the dreams of like the rivers of blood that Felicin was seeing?
No comment.
I think everybody here knows what it's about, so we'll keep quiet and we'll come back to those dreams when we get there. What else? I don't. Oh. Oh, and Icarium, when he says, I have felt manipulated all my life, in response to, I think, Mapo asking him why he's allowing himself to be manipulated by pust. And Mapo has to shake himself to disguise his flinch.
I just love those two. I love their dynamic. It's just so tragic. It just seeps with sadness.
And speaking of gods that we've met before, they all seem to keep referencing or swearing by the Queen of Dreams. who we don't really know who she is.
That's one of the most curious things about these books, and particularly the early books, to me, is the Queen of Dreams, as well as Beru, who we are not given, maybe in one of the glossaries. At some point I looked it up, but Beru is another god, and you hear Beru Fend all the time.
Mm.
And then, yeah, they reference the Queen of Dreams. And we have, like, no idea anything about her other than she's the Queen of High House Life. It's interesting that none of that is, like, defined. It's just a reference.
Yeah. And about the whirlwind, it was eager for more. The whirlwind awakened. This goddess is mad, riven with insanity. Who is there that can stop her? I think this was Fiddler's thought. Which again, like the scale of that storm is, I think it defies imagination a little bit.
Also, I was reminded of the Deck of Dragons reading.
Mm.
I think we should come back to it when we talk about the end of the book. I have no idea what it's referring to. I'll be
Yeah.
honest. Like, I was going through that and I was like, what is like, what are they talking about here? So that's one where I was just feeling lost. But I love the Deck of Dragons, so I am intrigued.
Which one? When the stuff that falls in front of Kalam, or did we get another reading in this section?
No, there's another one. So Mappo and Akarium go and find Pust after they found his broom, and he's doing a Deck of Dragons reading. Here, I'm just going to go ahead and read it because this is a good quote, and it's something I think to hold on to. This is Pust reading The Rope, Shadow Patron of Assassins. Ha! I feel like that may be Kalam, possibly, that or it could be Apsalar. Either one is a potential given their backgrounds. And then it gets really confusing. Subsequent cards followed in swift succession, Iskaro Pust announcing their identities as if his audience were ignorant or blind. Quote, upon the male twin upright, the luck that pushes, ill luck, terrible misfortune, miscalculation, poor circumstance. Interesting, something to keep our eyes on. Scepter, throne, queen of high house life, spinner of high house death, soldier of high house light, knight of life, mason of dark. A dozen more cards followed, then the high priest sat back, his eyes thin to slits, his mouth hanging open. Renewal, a resurrection without the passage through Hood's gates. Renewal. He looked up, met Ikarium's eyes. You must begin a journey soon. So that's how that journey happens. So he reads the Deck of Dragons, is like, you need to go and just do your thing. And then he's like, Shaik is dead. And they wonder if she will be resurrected or not.
Oh yeah, and I guess that was the other thing. Shaik died, but apparently she was successful in starting the apocalypse whirlwind sandstorm thing. And or is that a sign of her success, or is it not?
I think it's an open question at this point if she caused the whirlwind or if the whirlwind was going to happen regardless, too. How much was anyone could have opened the book, and how much was it the book at all, you know? Or was, again, history just boiling to the surface?
Go ahead, Dan.
I don't know. I don't know what the book is, to be honest.
The apocalypse, you mean, or the one we're reading?
No, the apocalypse book.
Yeah. Yeah. It is an interesting question. And who are they? The Tobla guy and the other guy, Leoman, they are just hanging out there with the book, right? They still have the book. Okay.
We don't know who they are. They're just two random people for now, I guess.
For now, maybe. Who knows? And okay, I have one last quote. Unless anyone else has more, but Raraku had awakened. All that Fiddler had sensed the last time he rode these wastes, sensed as an underlying restlessness, the spectral promise of nightmares beneath the surface, was now unleashed, exultant with freedom. I love that image. Any other quotes?
No
Thanks.
quotes. I just love the description of Raraku as something that transforms the people who cross it. It was used to describe the bridge burners and, all really a number of people, but and now obviously all our protagonists who are having to cross it to their own ends.
Yeah, and also not a quote, but I liked Buiker's supposition that Coltane burnt their headquarters as a way of saying they're not going to hide behind walls, and they head off.
Mm. And
I thought that was really striking.
And on the subject of Colton, he apparently now has tens of thousands of refugees trailing with his army, and good thing they did all that training with Malazan refugees, because fighting while trying to save the refugees' lives was what cost the most lives for the army. So hopefully we'll know if something came out of it in the next sections.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing the actual army of Coltane and his refugees.
Absolutely.
Yep. Sorry, Dan, were you saying something?
Not really.
Okay. Cool, then. We'll wrap up there. Any other closing thoughts?
Just that we're reading the rest of part 2,
yeah.
book 2.
I think I forgot to mention that. Yes, the rest of book 2 for next time. So up to chapter 10, the end of chapter 10. Yeah, so thank you so much for listening, and we'll see everybody in a week with the second half of The Whirlwind. Yeah, we'll see you soon. Bye.